As I stand there trying to make sense out of what Marcus just told us, only one thought keeps racing through my mind. Why would Anton do this? Even if he thought it was our fault that his brother had died, Darius is the one who knocked Monty's tooth out, not Marcus. So him attacking Marcus just doesn't make any sense. When I hear Marcus's mom still arguing with Aaliyah, Darius, and Lewis, now threatening to call the police, I push all of those thoughts out of my mind for now and try to focus back on the situation that's going on before me. I see she's not trying to hear a word that any of them have to say, so I step forward and try to reason with her. Auntie Pam, please, you've got to believe us. You know we would never hurt Marcus. We rushed over here because we were playing the game with him, and then we heard him scream, so we knew that something had to be wrong. As she cradles Marcus in her arms, wiping the blood from his face with the sleeve of her robe, it seems like she's starting to calm down a little bit. So then I continue. Before you busted in here, he told us that some kid from school, this boy named Anton, is the person who did this to him. But as soon as I tell her that, she gets all worked up again. She pulls her cell phone out of the pocket of her robe and begins to dial 911. But Darius tries to stop her. Auntie Pam, please don't call them. Do we really need to get the cops involved? I think we're all tired of dealing with them, don't you? I understand exactly what he means, because ever since the night that Jerome died, it feels like they've constantly been coming around. I mean, I know they're just doing their job, questioning us and whatnot, trying to figure out what happened to all of our friends, but I can't help but get an uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach every time I see them. So let me get this straight. You want me to just allow my baby to sit here bleeding to death just so that you all don't get in trouble for what you did to him? No, that's not what I'm saying. You can drive him to the hospital yourself. And we already told you that we're not the ones who did this to him. Well, I don't see anyone else standing here, she says, dialing the number and lifting the phone up to her ear. As she begins to tell the 911 operator her address and then the details of her emergency, Darius begins pleading with Marcus to get up and come with us. He reminds him that if he stays here, then he might not survive the night. We all let Darius do the talking, while me, Lewis, and Aaliyah just stand there nodding our heads, agreeing with everything that he's saying. But Marcus's mouth is so swollen that he can't even talk. He manages to mumble a few words, but I'm still unable to make out anything he's trying to say. Auntie Pam overhears us trying to get Marcus to leave and looks at us like we're crazy. What do you mean he won't survive the night? Are y'all threatening him now too? Before we even have the chance to respond, she tells the 911 operator, "Excuse me, miss. Now they're standing here threatening to do more harm to my son." Aaliyah tries to explain. "No, we're not, ma'am. All we're saying is that we think he'll be a lot safer with a bunch of people around. That's all. He'll be fine right here with me. And the only place he's going, thanks to you all, is to the hospital so that a doctor can take a look at his mouth and then probably give him some stitches. And y'all are gonna go to jail." As I start to hear the sound of police and ambulance sirens in the distance, my heart begins to race, and I look over at Marcus one last time before we all hurry and climb back out the window. "Hey, get back here," my Auntie Pam shouts after us. Then I can hear her telling the 911 operator that we all just fled through the window in her son's room, and she begins describing each one of us to them. "Look, we're going to have to run away, at least for tonight," Darius says once we get down the block away from Marcus's house. "What? Why?" "Because, if we go home, there's no way that we're all going to be allowed to stay together tonight. And in order to keep both Lewis and Marcus safe, we have to be the ones to protect them." "What about the trap? Do you think I'll have enough time to run home and grab the stuff?" Lewis asks. "Nah, I wouldn't chance it. The police are going to be pulling up any minute." So we all agree that Darius is right, and then we split up and quickly rush back to our houses to grab our bikes from our yards, and then we go riding down the street, out of our neighborhood, and then straight onto the back roads, hoping that the darkness will keep us somewhat hidden. Darius leads the way, and he doesn't stop until we get to the abandoned daycare. Then out of breath he tells us, "We can't stay here too long, because now the cops are going to be looking for us. but we've got to come up with a plan real quick. I say we go find Anton and beat his little ass for what he did to Marcus, Lewis suggests. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yo, we could go get him right now. I know what neighborhood he lives in. No, what we've got to do first is figure out what we're going to do about Marcus. We know he's on his way to the hospital. Do you think there's some way we could sneak in there and get him out? I ask. Hell no. Ain't no way we're going to be able to get in there without being seen. The cops are going to be looking for us, if they aren't already. And not to mention Mom and Dad once the cops contact them and tell them what happened. And I'm sure your Auntie Pat will be there too. Do you really think that she's going to let us get anywhere near him after what just happened? Remember, she thinks we did that to him, Aaliyah reminds me. And it's already so late. They're most likely just going to keep him overnight. Honestly, I think it's better that he stays there. Don't worry, he'll be safe. You don't know that for sure. No, I don't. But what I am sure about is that his mom ain't going to let nothing else happen to him. Do you really think that she's going to let him out of her sight tonight? Nah, she's way too worried about him. She'll be watching over him like a hawk. And you're the one who came to the conclusion that if we stay around adults, then the tooth fairy won't get us. What, you don't believe your own theory now? After thinking about it for a second, I answer, yeah, I guess you're right. He should be okay there. Then Aaliyah chimes in. Listen, I agree with Lewis and Darius. We gotta find Anton. But I don't think that we should beat him up. That's just gonna scare him off. What we gotta do is talk to him and find out why he came after Marcus. Yeah, and then maybe we can get him to confess what he did to the cops so that we won't get in trouble for it, I add. Look, I don't really care why he did it. We just need to find him to clear our names, Lewis says angrily. For real, bro, Darius replies, giving him a pound. Then he looks over at me and says, and no matter what, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. We snuck out of the house and then ran away. Plus, we left Auntie Pat's house knowing that the cops were going to want to talk to us and ask us a bunch of questions. We're going to be grounded for a very long time once we get back home. We'll be lucky if any of us get to see the light of day ever again after this. I don't care. It'll all be worth it as long as tomorrow Lewis and Marcus are both safe. Then at least we'll know that she bypassed them, Aaliyah says. Yeah, that's true. But what about after that? We'll figure it out when that time comes, just like we always do, Darius promises, putting his hand around my shoulder. But for now, I say we go try to find Anton. Then in a few hours, if we haven't found him yet, then we can find a place to hide out for the night. I don't know. I mean, even if we were to ride over to his neighborhood, I guarantee we're not going to find him out there. He's probably snug in his bed by now. I don't think so. He's probably out here hiding from the cops, just like we are. He had to have known that Marcus's mom was going to call them, and I'm sure that he also knows Marcus saw him and is going to tell the police who attacked him, Lewis adds. And how are we going to go looking for him when the cops and our parents are all looking for us? Darius answers, we've just got to be careful. There are 4 of us, so we can watch each other's back. Remember, he's by himself. So we spend the next few hours sneaking around town, dodging the cops and our parents' numerous phone calls. Every time my phone vibrates and I see that it's my mom calling, I want to answer it so badly and just tell her that I'm okay, because I know that she must be worried to death. And each time that I hear another police siren, I nearly jump right out of my skin. I know I'm just a kid, but that doesn't make me any less scared. I don't want to go to jail. We have a couple of close calls where we get pretty close to running into the cops, but we manage to keep dodging them. We also check all of the usual hangout spots that Anton, his brother, and their friends would usually go, but have no luck finding him, which leads us to believe that Aaliyah was right. He must have went back home, and we know that there's no possible way for us to get to him there. We can't just break into his house like he did to Marcus. We're already in enough trouble as it is. So finally, we give up looking for him and decide it's time to find a place to hide out for the night. Darius tells everyone, since we can't find Anton, our number 1 priority at this point is to just make sure that Lewis makes it through the night. We still don't know for sure which one of you she will try and go after tonight, but I'm assuming that it's you, Lewis, because we know that Marcus is most likely at the hospital with his mom. So helping him is out of our hands for now. All we can do is hope that his mom has everything under control there. And what if she doesn't? Aaliyah questions. Then I guess we'll find out tomorrow. I chime in. So do you guys have any ideas where we can hide out for the night? What about that basement in that old house that's for sale over on Hunter Street? Lewis suggests. Yeah, that would probably work if the police weren't already looking for us. But now I'm sure that they're going to search every nook and cranny until they find us. What about if we camp out in the woods? I think that's going to be our best bet, Darius agrees. Ugh, do we have to? Isn't there anywhere else we could go? Aaliyah whines. What are you complaining about? I thought you said you'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Yeah, I did. Alright, come on then. So we trudge through the woods, pushing our bikes along beside us until we get deep enough that we feel it's safe to camp out for the night. Then we hide them nearby, just in case we need to make a fast getaway, but cover them up with leaves so that anyone still looking for us won't spot them. Once we're all settled, Darius says that he'll stay up and keep first watch. Since we can't set up the trap like we wanted, the only other thing we can do is take turns keeping watch, and if she shows up, alert the others. I'm really tired from riding around all night, so I try to get some sleep. But when I lie down, I have a hard time getting comfortable. Sleeping on the hard ground and making a bed out of a bunch of cold, crunchy leaves is not my idea of a good night's sleep. But I'm so tired that a few times I do start to doze off. But every time I do, all I can think about is Anton and what he did to Marcus. I just wish we had found him tonight so that I could ask him why. I stay up for a little while longer, dozing off for a few minutes here and there. Then Aaliyah and Darius switch spots and she keeps watch. That's when I finally fall asleep, but then wake up a short while later to the sound of my phone vibrating. I glance at my watch. It's almost 4 in the morning. But when I realize that it could be Marcus calling because I texted him a few times and never got a reply, I bolt up and grab my phone. I don't recognize the number, but something inside of me is telling me to answer. So I do. Hello?
I heard you've been looking for me.
The person on the other end says. Immediately, I know who I'm talking to. I jump up, call Aaliyah over, and then start kicking Lewis and Darius awake. What? What's wrong? Is she here? Darius asks as he sits up and wipes the drool from the corners of his mouth. I put my finger up to my lips, motioning for them all to stay quiet. I don't want Anton to know that we're all together, and then I put the phone on speaker so that everyone can hear. It's Anton, I whisper, right before he continues.
Did you hear me, Malik? I already got one of you, and now you're going to be next. I'm going to get each and every one of you. You, your brother, Lewis, and Aaliyah. You're all going to pay.
I don't know why, because I've never really been afraid of Anton before. It was always his brother Monty that terrified me. But for some reason, a chill runs right through me.
She's coming, you know. I don't know when, but she's coming. And after she gets Marcus, I'll make sure that she comes for the rest of you. I'll pull out all of your teeth, one by one if I have to, just like I did to him.
Aaliyah lifts her hand to her mouth in shock, trying not to cry. But why? Why did you go after Marcus? He didn't do anything to you. Me and my brother's eyes meet, and I can see the anger on his face. When there's nothing but silence for a good 30 seconds, I start to think that maybe Anton hung up. But then finally he answers.
You know, me and Monty shared a room. I saw everything that happened to him that night. And I was so freaking scared that she was going to get me too. Because that day that me and you got into a fight and you punched me right in the face, my one tooth has been a little loose ever since. And each day, it just keeps getting looser. I can feel it just hanging on by a thread. I was lying there asleep that night when I heard Monty talking. He kept muttering, "What is that?" and swatting at something that was fluttering around his head. I thought he was just dreaming, so I started to get up to go wake him, and that's when I saw her. She was fluttering around in circles right above his head. And as soon as he sat straight up, that's when his head, it just exploded right there in front of me. There was blood and pieces of broken broken teeth, and chunks of flesh, skin, and bones splattered everywhere. And his tongue. It was lying halfway across the room on the floor.
A look of disgust floods Lewis's face. He covers his mouth and gags like he's about to throw up.
It all happened so fast. I'm not even exactly sure what happened. His whole face was gone. All that was left was a giant hole that I could see straight through. And there she was, fluttering right in the middle of it, with a sinister grin on her little face. I could tell she was proud of what she just did to my brother. Then, just as I opened my mouth to scream, she puts up her fingers.
I interrupt, asking, "How many did she hold up?"
Shut up! Let me finish! When I saw her face, that's when I realized that all of the stories I had heard about her, how she had killed your friends, were all true. So with tears streaming down my face, I dropped to my knees and begged her not to kill me. I told her that I'd do whatever she wanted me to if she spared me. I promised that I'd help her get the rest of you. I said I'd pull all of your teeth out, and then as soon as I told her that, her smile grew even wider, and then she put one finger down and went flying away.
"Why are you telling me all of this?" I ask him.
I'm telling you this because it's your fault. You made me do this. If it wasn't for your brother knocking my brother's tooth out, he would have never seen the tooth fairy in the first place, and then I wouldn't have seen her either. You all caused this to happen, and we can settle this right now if you meet me at the school in an hour. I'll be waiting on the playground.
Then he hangs up. The first thought that comes to mind is that I've got to call Marcus and warn him. So I dial his number over and over, but get no answer. "Something must have happened to him," I tell them, frantic. "Do you think he's dead?" For a moment, no one says anything, but the look on their faces tells me all I need to know. Just as I'm about to bust out in tears, Darius suddenly blurts out, "No, I'm sure he's just asleep. Text him instead and let him know what's going on." My hands tremble as I type and then send the text message. It goes through, but after a few minutes, there's still no reply. That's when panic and fear wash over me as I realize, who knew that Anton was going to be the one that we needed to worry about? We all come to the decision that we should probably go meet him, so we grab our bikes and start heading over to the school. "What do you think he wants us to meet him for?" I ask Darius when we get about a block away. "The only reason I can think of is that he's going to try to attack us just like he said. But it doesn't matter, we'll be ready if he tries anything. There are more of us than there is of him." The ride there is pretty quiet and uneventful. I wonder if the police have finally given up on trying to find us. When we arrive at the school, we ride around to the back where the playground is, but don't see anyone there. "Are you kidding me? He's not even here. He probably saw us all coming and ran off," Lewis shouts angrily. Darius tells me, "Call that number back that he called you from." So I do, and after a few seconds, Aaliyah stops suddenly and tells us all to be quiet. "Wait, do you hear that?" After we all quiet down, we hear the faint sound of a phone ringing. We listen closely, but can't quite make out where it's coming from. But we follow the sound of it, and it leads us over to the school. "He must be in there," Lewis says, pointing toward the busted window on the door. We cautiously approach it and then walk inside, making sure to step over the pieces of broken glass on the floor. We search the whole first floor for Anton, which only takes us about 10 minutes because all of the classrooms are locked, so we know that he can't be in any of them. Then we make our way up to the second floor next. We search half of the second floor and still no sign of him. And while we're making our way past the steps to search the other end of the hallway, Lewis tells Aaliyah, "Hurry up," when he sees that she's walking farther behind the rest of us. That's when we hear her let out a high-pitched scream, and she goes tumbling down the stairs. When we turn around, we see Anton running up the other set of stairs to the third floor, and Darius goes racing after him. "Come on, let's go make sure she's okay," Lewis says. So we go to help Aaliyah and to make sure that she's not hurt. We find her lying at the bottom of the stairs, crying and holding her ankle. "I think it may be broken," she tells us through her tears. So Lewis and I help her up, and then he tells me, "I got this. You go find Darius and tell him that she's hurt." "Okay," I reply as I go darting back up the stairs. When I reach the top, I look back and see Aaliyah hobbling along, trying to make her way back up the stairs, as she holds onto the banister on one side and Lewis's shoulder on the other. Once I see that they're all right, I go running up to the 3rd floor and then down the hallway searching for Darius. And when I find him, he's all out of breath from running. "I lost him. That little shit is quick." "Well, where do you think—" "Shh," Darius says, cutting me off. Then he points to the janitor closet just around the corner, and when I look, I see that the door is standing halfway open. "Look at this. The janitor wouldn't have left this open." "You stay here. I'm gonna go check it out," he tells me. So I stand there waiting as he steps inside. Then the next thing I know, I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, and when I turn to look, I feel a sharp pain as I get hit right upside the head with something. I cry out and fall to the floor holding the side of my head. Darius hears me scream, and as soon as he turns around and starts heading back out of the closet to see what happened, Anton rushes forward, slams the door closed, and slaps a padlock on it. Darius begins banging and kicking at the door, shouting at whoever locked him inside to let him out. I don't think he saw who it was because Anton was on the opposite side of the door when he slammed it shut. Now he's standing over me, gripping a piece of wood in his hand. I'm assuming that must be what he hit me with. Just as he raises it in the air, preparing to smack me with it again, I put my hands up to protect my face and close my eyes, bracing for the hit, and that's when I hear Lewis shout, "You better not touch him or I'll kill you." I open my eyes and glance down the hall in the direction that his voice just came from and see him helping Aaliyah sit down. He props her up against the lockers and then he comes racing down the hallway after Anton, who just ran off. I get up when I realize that Darius is still banging on the janitor closet door. Aaliyah manages to get up off of the floor by herself and is on her way down the hall, hobbling along, holding on to the lockers for support. When she gets closer, she sees me trying to get the lock open and says, "Use the bottom of that fire extinguisher over there." So I grab it from the wall and start banging the bottom of it up against the lock, but it just won't break. "I'm not strong enough," I tell her when she finally reaches me. "Here, let me try." So I hand her the fire extinguisher, and while balancing on one foot, she takes a few swings at it. She doesn't break the lock off, but she does manage to break the latch. Darius comes busting out the door. "What in the hell happened?" "Anton locked you in there, and he hit me upside the head with something," I tell him, placing my fingers to the bloody cut on the side of my head. He walks over and takes a quick look at it as I tell him, "I'm okay." Then he goes to check on Aaliyah. Once he sees that she's alright, he tells me, "I'll help her. You go catch up with Lewis and help him get Anton." Then him and Aaliyah start hobbling down the hall again, and I race off leaving them behind. When I speed around the corner, I hear Lewis shout, "I got him! He's down here!" I race to the end of the hallway, and when I get down there, the classroom that they are both inside of is locked. But I can see through the little rectangular window on the door that Lewis has a hold of Anton by the shirt collar. He's dangling him in the air and punching him in the face and chest. I look back down the hall at Darius and Aaliyah, who are slowly making their way towards me. "He's got him! He's whooping his ass!" I scream. Darius replies, "Hell yeah!" I pull on the door handle again, but I can't get in. The door's locked. Aaliyah and Darius finally reach the classroom and peer through the little window to get a look at what's going on. And now Anton is laughing as blood drips from his nose and mouth. "What's so funny? I'm going to beat you bloody, you little shit," Lewis angrily screams at him. Then Anton raises his hand and points at something behind Lewis. We all look, and that's when I realize that every single one of the classroom's windows are open. And then I see her, fluttering back and forth through the air, right behind where Lewis is standing with that same sinister grin that she always has plastered on her face. We all start frantically screaming at the top of our lungs and banging on the door trying to get inside. Lewis drops Anton and then turns to look. A moment later, he starts screaming too. He's swatting at her as she flies around his head, taunting him. Then he picks up a desk and tosses it through the air at her. When Darius balls his hand into a fist and starts punching the window on the door, Anton pushes the teacher's desk up against it so that we can't get inside. But Darius still proceeds to break the window. He ends up cutting his arm, but he still manages to reach his hand inside. But then Anton grabs his arm to prevent him from unlocking the door. That's when he grabs a piece of the broken glass and slices Darius across the arm with it. I get so distracted by what's going on with them that the next thing I know, I lose sight of the Tooth Fairy. And then seconds later, when Darius pulls his arm back out to see how badly he's been cut, we can all clearly see through the window again now. I stare, not believing the sight that's happening right before my eyes. Lewis is wildly flailing around with one hand swinging through the air and the other holding his mouth shut, trying to block her from getting in there. But she's just so fast that he can't hit her. His eyes grow wide, and she's only inches away from his mouth now. And probably through pure desperation, trying to get away from her, he suddenly throws himself out one of the windows. Just as we hear a loud thud, Aaliyah lets out a horrified gasp. Darius and I both scream his name, calling it over and over, but there's no response. Then we start panicking because we're all the way up on the 3rd floor. I ask them, "Do you think he's—" "No, don't even say it," Darius says, cutting me off. That's when Anton stares Darius right in the eyes with a smirk and says matter-of-factly, "I think you better get down there and help him. After that fall, I don't know if he'll be conscious enough to get up and run away from her." I can tell by the angry glare on Darius's face that all he wants to do right now is crush Anton into pieces. But instead, he goes running off down the hallway. Me and Aaliyah stay there, still in shock of what just occurred. That's when Anton walks over to the windows and looks down at the ground below. After a moment, he glances back at me and Aaliyah and says, "I think your brother is a little too late. But if you two hurry up, maybe you can still save your other friend. Remember, he's not the only one who lost a tooth tonight." Instantly, I think of Marcus and how I haven't been able to get into contact with him since we left his house earlier tonight. I look over at Aaliyah. "Come on, let's go," she tells me as she wraps her arm around my neck, and I help her hobble back downstairs and outside. Once we get out there, I see Darius kneeling on the ground next to Lewis's body, crying his eyes out. Just looking at him, I can tell that we're too late. He's already dead. And he didn't die from the fall. She got him. The Tooth Fairy killed him just like she did to all of my other friends. He's lying there on the ground lifeless, with a giant hole where his face should be. You can see right through it, straight down to the grass on the ground beneath. There's blood splattered everywhere. I turn away after a few seconds because the sight is making me sick to my stomach. Aaliyah hobbles over and places her hand on Darius's shoulder. At least he didn't feel anything. I think he probably knocked himself out from the fall. Then I tell him, "Anton just said that she's gonna get Marcus next. Come on, we have to go now so that we can warn him." "Not until he pays for what he did," he screams, standing and then smacking Aaliyah's hand off of his shoulder. Then he goes running back into the school. "Wait, come back, what are you doing?" I call after him. When he doesn't reply, I'm just about to go after him, but Aaliyah grabs my arm and begs me not to leave her out there alone. Then about a minute later, I hear Darius screaming and cursing as he comes walking back outside. "God damn it, he's gone. He got away." Just then, we hear police sirens in the distance. "Come on, we've got to go. He must have set off a silent alarm when he broke into the school." I help Aaliyah start walking toward the playground where we left our bikes. When we get there and she tries to climb on hers, she shouts out in pain and says that her foot is too hurt to pedal. So I tell her, "You're just going to have to ride on Darius's handlebars then, and we'll have to leave your bike here." When I glance back and see that Darius is still standing there, staring at Lewis's body, I shout again, "Let's go, they're coming." When he makes his way over, climbs onto his bike, and we start to pedal away into the night, I glance over and see the same look on both of their faces. I think there are only two things on all three of our minds right now. We have to get Marcus out of that hospital, and Anton is going to have to pay for what he just did. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.